etc. He says that we have to serve and conserve. I really love that translation. The idea is earth is here. The earth is available for you to use. However, you have an obligation to conserve it. That is part of Sachs's understanding that there is no other way to approach the environment, to approach Earth, other than we have a responsibility towards it. And some of the laws that he mentioned in the beginning, in terms of taking care of the land, etc., we're going to see a little later. Okay, but we will do that. Now, here are a couple of important texts. Let me go back to sharing my screen. And hopefully this will work. And now I can't get to the next. Okay, see the problem. This is, I can't. There we go. So Psalm 24 has a verse in it that basically says the earth belongs to God, not just the earth, but everything else in it. That means all of the vegetation, all of the animals, all of humanity. Now, when it says that everything belongs to God, what does that mean? Am I not my own self? Do I really belong to God? Or is there a separate message here? I want to propose the following. There are two elements that we have to think about. One is when God creates humanity, as we saw in that first slide, it says that we are created in God's image. Now, God doesn't have an image. So clearly it's not that we have the same nose as God or that we walk like God. And yet the rabbis have to try to understand, what does it mean? What does it mean that we are made in the image of God? So one of the things the rabbis say is that we are made with the ability to do things that God can do as well. So we will never be like God. We will never be gods, but we can do things that God can do. So for example, God can create humanity. We can create life. The difference, and this is one of my favorite ideas, when God creates humanity from earth. So you might know, or you might not know, and it's totally okay, but the word for earth is Adama, and the word for man is Adam, right? Adam is not a name of this specific human being. Adam initially is the name for humanity. Humanity and earth are integrally connected. They're connected in their names, but more so, the fact that God made man from earth. And let's be honest here, none of us believes that this is how humanity was created, right? So if you don't believe that that is how humanity is created, then why would the Torah tell me this? If not to give me a message. And what message is being given by this text? Man and earth are connected. Humanity and earth are connected. You destroy the earth, you are actually destroying humanity in certain ways. To me, that is such a powerful idea that it's not just that, oh, we're going to destroy a tree. It's so much more than that. It is the idea that we are going to be the ones who are going to suffer. It is not just that we're going to have one less tree. It's that we are destroying our own essence, basically. So what we have, the earth is not ours. The earth belongs to God. We are supposed to use what God has created, because that is the reason why God created us, to enjoy this world. There is even a midrash that says that when you get to heaven after 120 years, one of the questions you're going to be asked is, did you enjoy my world? So it is not saying that we can't do anything. On the contrary, it's saying God gave you a wonderful gift. It's almost a sin not to use the gift, but to use the gift in a way that destroys it. That is not what we should be doing, right? The idea that we have responsibility, that we have moral principles that we have to adhere to, that we shouldn't have this egotistical understanding of I can do whatever I want and who cares about anybody else. Those are the ideas that are being given to us from the very beginning of the Bible. This idea of environmental responsibility doesn't stop in Genesis. It's one of the principles that will underline several commandments. There is a commandment of sabbatical for the land. We'll get there, that you have to stop and leave the land alone. There are commandments on how we can approach animals that are part of the earth's resources. There are commandments about things that we can mix and things that we cannot mix. And Maimonides, for example, says that the minute that we overexploit land, what we do is land will lose its fertility. Now, who's going to suffer? The land? Yes. But ultimately, if the land is not fertile, it is humanity that will suffer because there will not be food enough for us. Okay. Same thing with the laws that actually do not allow us to crossbreed. Why? Because if you're crossbreeding, you are creating problems for the animals. And there are tons of other laws basically saying there is social justice that needs to be applied to the natural world. Every living thing, as we saw in that verse from Psalms, every living thing is God's property. When you destroy it, when you abuse it, when you waste it, you are basically saying to God, I couldn't care less about you, and I couldn't care less about the gift that you gave us. Now put yourself in the place of a person that gets a really special gift and gives it to somebody else. And that person basically says to you, I couldn't care less about your gift. How would you feel? So that's the idea that is behind all of the laws in the Torah and in the Talmud and in other quotes about how we should approach the environment. Any questions or comments or ideas? Okay, we'll continue. So, what I'm going to show you next, if I can, here we go. Remember the story that Rabbi Sachs told us at the end of his 1-minute talk, right? This is coming from a midrash called Kohelet Rabbah. It is based on a verse from Ecclesiastes. And it says that God actually takes Adam by the hand and shows him all the Garden of Eden and says, look at my works, look at how beautiful they are, and I created this all for you. But you have to make sure that you're not going to corrupt and destroy the world that I created for you, because if you do, there will be no one to repair it. Beautiful midrash, but it's also a troubling one. The reason I find this midrash troubling is, what does it mean when you say that there is going to be no one to repair it? So if I break somebody, is it not possible, if I break something, is it not possible to rebuild it, to put it back together? What does it mean? And it is not clear, but what is clear is God is basically saying there are things that you may not be able to rebuild. Once things are destroyed, some things can be put together, some things can be fixed, but others cannot. And therefore, you have to watch it. Because if you destroy it, it is forever gone. Powerful thought, powerful statement, difficult to understand, but important, right, to keep in mind. Next. I'm having trouble moving my slides. Here we go. According to Judaism, because of all of these sources that we have read, we are co-partners with God in the work of creation. Now, I read a beautiful text last week that spoke about the following. We all know that in Judaism, there are three very important concepts: creation, revelation, and redemption. The idea is that after creation, at some point, we destroyed things, Adam, and then God reveals himself with a whole bunch of laws, that's Sinai, and we will have a world that will be redeemed at some point. Now, for some traditionalists, that means that there will be a Messiah that will come, etc., a Messiah as in a person. Many believe that it doesn't refer to a person, but it refers to a time in which the world is going to be perfected. So if we go back to that idea that we had ecological balance, and then Adam said, oh, I'm going to do whatever I want, and I'm not going to obey the limits that God gave me. Therefore, we created ecological imbalance. What does it mean that we are going to reach an area of redemption? When we understand that we are co-partners with God, and that now that there has been some kind of imbalance, we are responsible for bringing the world back to a stage of balance. That is what redemption is. The Messianic times are the times in which we will have rebuilt the world to be the way God originally envisioned it. So if God had a vision of paradise, and paradise doesn't just mean, a garden with trees. Paradise means a place where everything works properly from nature to humanity, where there is no violence, where people respect each other, where differences are accepted. Not everybody has to be alike, and we do not treat people differently because of whatever differences they may have. So in terms of the environment, it is our job, at least that's how Judaism understands it. It is our job to co-create the world and make sure that it gets to a point where it mirrors God's original intent. Another term, another verse from Kohelet, from Ecclesiastes: one generation goes, another comes, but the earth remains the same forever. Meaning, pay attention to what you're doing, because ultimately, you come into the world, you leave the world. If we live 120 years, unlikely, but we can hope for, if we live 120 years, 120 years is a lot of time from our perspective, but from a perspective of a universe that has been around for millions, billions of years, what is 120 years? It's boom, you come and you go. The earth is actually going to be here. Are we going to ensure that the next generations will have access to the earth as we did? Or are we going to say to the other generations, we don't care about you, we just care about us, and we're going to use whatever we can, and hey, if you have nothing left when you come, not my problem, I'll be dead by then. So this is a story that shows that a long time ago in the Talmud, there were people that felt this way. So Honi is walking along. He sees a man. He's an old man, and he's planting a fruit tree and a carob tree. And Honi looks at him and says, do you have any idea how long it's going to take for this tree to get fruit? Like, why would you even think of planting a fruit tree? By the time it gets fruit, you won't be here. You'll be dead. So why are you going through the trouble? And the answer that this man gives is amazing. He says, yes, but somebody before me planted trees so that I could have this. And therefore, I have an obligation to plant trees so that the next generations are going to be able to enjoy this. That's a powerful message, right? The message that if you think I can do whatever I want with the world, just go back and think, what would have happened if my parents, if my grandparents, if my great-grandparents had felt this way? If they felt, I can do whatever I want with the world, it makes no difference. What world would we have inherited? And if for no other reason, just because somebody did it for us should be enough of a reason for us to do it for others, right? That is very, very powerful. Now, there's something more here that I'd like to add. From Judaism's point of view, one of the worst sins a person can commit is idolatry. Now, people sometimes understand idolatry as, oh, okay, so you take a statue and you pray to that statue, that's idolatry. That is idolatry, for sure. But that's not the only thing. Destroying the world, destroying the earth, actually could be understood as a form of idolatry. Why? A, because when you destroy the earth, you mean, whether saying it or not saying it, it's mine and I can do whatever I want. Now, the minute you say, it is mine, that is already a form of idolatry. God built the world, and we know this today because of science. God took billions of years to build this world. Do we really believe that we can, in one generation, destroy everything that God created, everything that took God this much time to build? We can just come and destroy it? Obviously, that is a form of idolatry. It's like, I don't care about your work, God. Oh, it took you a long time. Not my problem. That's your problem. I can do whatever I want. So these are the issues that we are dealing with. Do we consider the earth ours? Do we consider the earth God's? Do we consider our responsibility towards the next generations? That's what we're talking about. And I want to just put one more slide up before I ask to see if there are any questions or comments. So give me 1 second. And I know you can't see it in the right way. Here we go. So look at this. This is from a Reform rabbi. Part of the philosophy behind Judaism's environmental regulations is the view that the world does not belong to humanity, but is the creation of God entrusted to humanity's stewardship. Despoiling the world is not only against our own self-interest, but it is a denial of God. Protecting it is one way of acknowledging God's creative power. Another aspect of Jewish philosophy is that we deal in the long term. There is a responsibility toward the future, towards next generations, and then he cites the story that we just read. So this pretty much sums up the theological understanding of our responsibility towards nature, towards the environment. I'm going to move from here to practical laws, practical things that we can do. Before we move forward, any questions, any comments? Feel free to disagree with me. You do not have to agree. If there's something that doesn't sit well with you, throw it out there. Nothing? Yes, Janice.
part of the challenge is that many of the ill effects of man's action on the environment take a long time to see and recognize. So, and that combined with the fact that it's so easy to rationalize that, yeah, I'm cutting down this section of Brazilian rainforest so that the poor residents of the area can earn income and sustain themselves from the land. So there's the rationalization that what I'm doing may actually be God's intent for how we use the land, and the fact that humans have such short memories and understanding of time that it's beneficial today. So how do we balance that?
Good. So a simple answer to the question, which is not exactly simple, is if we follow the laws that the Torah and the rabbis have prepared, we are much more likely not to incur in that kind of problem. Now, so there are very clear rules of not wasting. There are very, and I mean, when it says no waste, it's no wasting anything. We're going to see a couple of ideas here. It's really, you cannot waste, according to the rabbis, you cannot, if you have something that you no longer use, whether it is a plate, a pot, a vase, shoes, an outfit, you are not allowed to get rid of it in any way other than passing it on to somebody who could use it, which is an incredible idea. And interestingly enough, I have one daughter that lives in Israel, and I am always extremely surprised. In Israel, this is common. They have all these WhatsApp groups of neighborhoods where everybody puts what they are getting, what they want to get rid of there, right? And it's this, sometimes you look and it's like the stupidest things, like there's a purple vase and the person just posts, I have a purple vase, anybody want it? And it's amazing, somebody always wants it. So something that you would consider, oh, this is just an old t-shirt, I'm going to throw it out, right? Judaism says you cannot throw it out. You cannot throw it out. You can only throw it out if really, let's say you have shoes and the shoes are completely worn and they have holes in it, then they really cannot be worn by anybody. But you should make an effort to pass on your things to somebody who could use it. And a very simple situation that I dealt with last week, I have about 1,000 LPs. Now, who else has long plays today? I don't even have anywhere to play the long plays on. Why am I holding onto this? And I am, getting to that age where you start getting rid of things. So I decided to get rid of 1,000 long plays. The easiest thing for me to do, honestly, is throw them in the trash. That is the easiest thing for me to do. I just put them in the trash and that's it. I didn't do it. And I didn't do it exactly because Judaism says you're not supposed to do it. So I found a place that takes them. Anything. They just take them and they have a store where they sell it for $1 each for anybody who's interested. So they're going to make money on my long plays, which I don't mind. But note, I'm going to have to put everything in a box, put it in the car, drive it 25 minutes away, come back 25 minutes, right? But that's what Judaism is saying. Doing it differently would be good for me. And I could rationalize, and I think that's a very important word, Janice, that you used. I could rationalize it by saying, well, does God not want me to use my time better? Shouldn't I be teaching another class instead of driving the car to take the LPs there? But that's a selfish look. That's like, really? Am I the center of the universe? I'm not. And there's a reason why the Torah says that I shouldn't waste anything. And so I'm going to do this. I'm going to take it. Somebody is going to, have fun with it. Somebody's making their money on it. They have a store. That's what they're going to make money on. Somebody is going to be able to buy something they want for $1. It's not my business what's going to happen, but it is my business that I'm not putting it in the trash. That being said, Judaism also says that humanity's needs are higher in a priority scale than animals' needs. That is why you are allowed to kill an animal to eat, but you're not allowed to kill an animal for fun. Hunting is not allowed in Judaism, but you can kill an animal if that is your source of food. And if you need, there was a discussion a few years ago in London. They wanted to expand Heathrow because it's become, just incredibly busy, and they needed to expand the airport. But in order to expand the airport, they would actually have to put a highway in a place that are residential homes. And there's a discussion: can they do that or can they not? Now, obviously, the politicians in London couldn't care less about what Judaism says. But we Jews were looking at this and saying, is it important? Is it actually really going to make life easier? Are we bringing something better for the entire population of London and other areas in Great Britain and sacrificing, let's say, 50 families? Or, right? So it's the same thing with a forest. Or are we really making, in the case of the forest, the answer is very clear. Even if you are helping 50 families, even if you are helping 200 families, even if you're helping 1,000 families, you are destroying the world for 8 billion people. So it is clear where we're at, right? It's sometimes difficult to, balance the needs, but sometimes it's clear. And it's really about how do we justify things? If you're just looking for a reason to do what you want to do, I guess that's how you justify it. Oh, I'm curating jobs for poor families. But the truth is, even if those families need jobs, let's find them other jobs. Let's find them other jobs, because we cannot destroy the universe and create a problem for literally 8 billion people. Does that make sense? Perfect. Okay. So let me go back to the PowerPoint. And I want to now go into several of the laws that are more like clear. So far we were dealing more with a philosophical, theological look, and now we're going to look at some laws that are very, very straight to the point. Like, this is what you can do, and this is what you cannot do. So here we go. There we go. Okay. So this is the laws that talk about the land resting. And we know about these laws. 6 years, you can work the land. And then on the 7th year, you need to stop, right? This is the way it is written in the Torah. But the important thing here is twofold. After giving these laws, God could have said, you're going to do this because this is what's best for the earth. That's not what God says. God says, you're going to do this because the land is mine. You are sojourners. And here again, we see that idea of we're just passing through 120 years, but we're passing through. The world is going to continue existing, and therefore we have a responsibility to maintain it, right? So we know that this is one kind of law about taking care of the environment. You cannot overuse the fields. You're not allowed to use the land in a way that it is going to destroy it. That goes for the sowing and the harvesting, but it also goes for anything else. So if I am going to add chemicals to the soil, and that is going to end up killing the fertility of that earth, I am not allowed to do that. Here's another law. When we are fighting a war, so this is obviously the worst case scenario, because this is when you're fighting wars, right? If it applies to wars, it applies even more so in times of peace. But if you're going to war and you have to besiege city for a long time until you're able to capture it. You're not allowed to destroy the trees. You may eat of them, but you may not cut them down. So what is the situation here? The situation is, well, why can't we cut the trees down? And God says, are trees of the field human to withdraw before you into the besieged city? Only trees that you know will not yield food may be destroyed. But even those, you may cut them down only if you are going to build siege works against the city that is waging war on you until it has been reduced. So a clear law, you are only allowed to eat from the trees that have fruit. You cannot cut the trees. You may only cut down other trees if you need them to protect yourself against the ones that are fighting war against you. If not, you're not allowed to destroy them. You're not allowed to cut them down. So this probably answers the question about the Amazon forest, right? A few other laws. Rabbi Yossi ben Rebbe Abun, this is from the Jerusalem Talmud, said, it is forbidden to dwell in a city which has no vegetable garden. Which basically means if I forbid anybody from living in a city with no vegetable garden, then there will be no city without a vegetable garden because nobody can live there, right? This idea that you want to live in a place, even if you're in Manhattan, you have to have Central Park, right? You have to have greenery. In this case, vegetable garden actually means food, a land where you can actually take food. But in general, if we expand this understanding, you need to live in areas that have greenery because that's important for humankind. Now look at this one. One must distance a permanent threshing floor 50 cubits from the city so that the chaff will not harm the city's residents. Furthermore, a person should not establish a permanent threshing floor even on his own property unless he has 50 cubits of open space in every direction. And one must distance a threshing floor from the plantings of another and from another's plowed field far enough that it does not cause damage. From the Talmud. Now, I'm going to take a law that was written 2,000 years ago for the reality of 2,000 years ago, and I'm going to read it for today. And what this basically says is, I cannot have a factory polluting in a city where it's going to affect the residents. It cannot destroy things around a city if that is going to affect the residents. There is a responsibility that I have towards others. Pollution affects residents, right? That's what the Talmud meant, even though, of course, it's not talking about pollution because they didn't have industries that pollute the way we do. But the idea is anything that will become a problem for people who live in that area, you're not allowed to do. This is Maimonides on that text that we just read in the Talmud. And he explains it a little more. When a person makes a threshing floor within his own property, or establishes a latrine or a place to perform work that creates dust, dirt, or the like, he must distance the place of his activity far enough that the dirt, the odor of the latrine, or the dust does not reach his colleague and cause him damage. So you see the responsibility here that you should be able to say, hey, it is my property and I can put a latrine there. And Maimonides says, no, you can't. No, you cannot, because if your neighbor is going to have to deal with the smell, you're not allowed to do it. Even if it is the wind that brings the dirt, the loose strands of flax, or the chaff, or the like, generated when he performs his activity to his colleague's premises, he must separate himself so that it does not reach his colleague's property and cause damage, even when this is caused by ordinary wind. For all those situations can be likened to causing damage with one's arrows. So going back to the question that Janice asked, if we actually followed our own rules, we would be so much more careful with anything that we do, right? If you're building you are being careful not to be destroying something that could be problematic for your neighbor. If I am building and there is dust, I need to really think how I'm going to do this so that it doesn't create a problem for my neighbor. I'm not allowed to do whatever I want if it is going to affect other people. So if you remember in the beginning, we're talking about this is God's earth, you're not allowed to destroy it. That is one part of it. But there's also another part of it that has nothing to do with God directly. It has to do with your responsibility towards other human beings. You cannot just do whatever you want to do. And here are a few more statements, all of them from the Talmud. One, who resources. Now, resources, water, electricity, or any other resource is comparable to one who destroys items of value, which you're not allowed to do, Jewishly speaking, right? Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi taught a valuable moral lesson that a person should not pour the water from his well when others are in need of it. It is from this verse in the Talmud that comes everything that I said earlier, that you are not allowed to get rid of something if somebody else could use it. You may not build kilns in Jerusalem. Now, I have no idea what is the issue with kilns, but apparently kilns really created, kilns really created a problem for the environment. Okay, so these laws, these added laws, are all laws that are very practical and refer to what is our obligation, what is it that we can do, what is it that we cannot do, right? Not cutting trees that bear fruit, making sure that you don't do anything that might bring an extinction of species. All of the laws of Bal Tashchit basically means that you're not allowed to destroy, damage, or waste anything, not just during war times, but at any point. So when we think about these concepts, if I can't waste anything, and by the way, Maimonides actually said that a righteous person would never waste anything, not even a kernel of mustard, right? There is this idea that I am not allowed to waste, I'm not allowed to destroy, because that is really considered anti-Jewish. So the Code of Jewish Law says clearly, one is forbidden to destroy or injure anything that can potentially be useful to humankind. This is equally valid for public and private property. So even if you say it's my pair of shoes, I can do whatever I want, Judaism says, not really. You cannot do whatever you want. You have to be careful. You have to be careful with your things. You have to be careful with other people's things, because ultimately wasting is a sign of being evil. That's really a strong statement. And if we take this seriously, we would understand a lot better our responsibility not to destroy, right? So here is another text. It is the way of the righteous and of people of action who love peace and are happy in the good of their fellows, and who bring them close to Torah, that they should never waste even the seed of the mustard plant. That is the Maimonides comment. If people, this is not the way of their brothers, the evildoers who do damage. So the evildoers are the ones who are happy with the destruction of the world, and they destroy it. How powerful is that? So now here comes from the 19th century, Rabbi Shimshon Raphael Hirsch, an Orthodox rabbi, who said, if you should regard the beings beneath you as objects without rights, not perceiving God who created them, and therefore desire that they feel the might of your presumptuous mood instead of using them only as the means of wise human activity, then God's call proclaims to you, do not destroy anything. Be a mensch, I love to be a mensch. Only if you use the things around you for wise human purposes, sanctified by the word of my teaching, only then are you a mensch and have the right over them, which I have given you as a human. However, if you destroy, if you ruin, at that moment, you are not a human and you have no right to the things around you. I lent them to you for wise use only. Never forget that I lent them to you. As soon as you use them unwisely, be it the greatest or the smallest, you commit treachery against my world. You commit murder and robbery against my property. You sin against me. In truth, there is no one nearer to idolatry than one who can disregard the fact that all things are the creatures and property of God, and who then presumes to have the right, because he has the might, to destroy them according to a presumptuous act of will. Yes, that one is already serving the most powerful idols: anger, pride, and above all, ego, which in its passion regards itself as the master of things. Now, I want to conclude today with a few resolutions from the conservative movement. Here we go. From 2003, this is a statement that the conservative movement put out. Generations come and go, political leadership changes. Haaretz leolam omedet, the earth stands forever. As the matrix for all life, the earth is precious. This is a basic teaching of our Jewish tradition, and certainly not that tradition alone. All people have the responsibility to care for the cradle of humanity and the home of future generations. Thus, the United Synagogue calls upon the political leadership of our country to ensure that earth, its heirs, and its seas and bounty, our environment, be considered a first priority, to preserve it as a healthy and viable setting for our citizenry, and that any measure enacted be viewed within perspective of what it will yield in terms of sound environment. This was in 2003. It was a short statement that was then followed by a resolution with very practical steps. After the 2003 resolution, they had a 2007 resolution, and then a 2019. The resolution of 2019 is actually long, but I'm bringing in this slide the main points that the resolution brings down. And importantly, the resolution says that every Jewish organization that belongs to the conservative movement, and that every conservative Jew, so there is an organization responsibility, but there's also an individual responsibility that every conservative Jew should be doing. So first, respond with urgency. Don't think, I can think about this 20 years from now. No, you need to think about it right now. It's important and it's urgent. 2, inform ourselves about sustainability issues. What can I do? How can I do it? Talk with family, friends, colleagues, and coworkers. It is not enough for a person to do something only for themselves. They need to talk to other people because this really ripples. Make all decisions align with the goals of sustainability. And they do say, as I said before, this is personal and organizational. So every synagogue should make sure that they are doing the best they can for the environment. Advocate for sustainable practices in business and government. Appoint someone, if this is in case of an organization, to hold a designated sustainability portfolio. So there should be somebody appointed in every Jewish organization that will do the best they can in terms of research, etc., to propose actions that can be taken so that the organization is doing work to protect the environment. Develop and incorporate texts, teachings, and values of Jewish environmentalism in the curricula of our formal and informal education for everyone. This means synagogue teaching, camp teaching, Hebrew school teaching for adults, for children, everything. We should be teaching these texts. We should be telling people that this is not a, oh, cool new age thing that we're engaging in. It is cool, but it's not new age. This is the basic premise of Judaism. And last, create appropriate bodies that can guide the implementation. So the conservative movement calls, there are, by the way, responses in the Reform movement and in the Orthodox movement that are very similar, but I wanted to bring the conservative one to you. We don't do this because we're nice. We don't do this because we're good American citizens. That too. But even if you're not a good American citizen, you have a Jewish obligation stemming from our oldest texts, Torah, Talmud, and then going through, that we have to take care of the world, that it is our responsibility, that we cannot wait until tomorrow. We have to start today. And this is just a very good time to start, considering that Tu B'Shvat is in a few days. So I'm going to leave you with that charge. We should always take care of everything that we can in our own ways. So recycling is, the minimum we can do. Anything else that we can do, we can look at how can I make my house more efficient, less destructive? How can I make my business? How can I make my environment, my neighborhood? Can I have a group of people that are going to work together with me to really become guardians of the earth? Can we learn how to control our desires and do what is best for the greater good, not just for our own good? Can we use resources wisely so that our children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, as well as their children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, will have the same earth that we had when we came here, an earth that had much more than what we have today because we have destroyed it. And I'm going now into Q&As. So Nancy, feel free to moderate this, or Janice, anybody who would like to ask any question or just talk, tell me what you think, what you are doing, or what you think we should be doing. I am open to any comment. Guys, don't tell me that we went an hour here and nobody has anything to say. Janet.
Well, I thank you for bringing to our awareness that there are biblical quotes thinking about the problems that we have now, and making us aware that anything we do to maintain and repair the world around us not only helps us and our generation and the people around us, but it does help and protect people coming forth in later generations. And I think too many in business and government do not pay attention to that fact. And thank you for making it easier for us to understand.
My pleasure, and thank you for that comment. It is our obligation to stay on top of our politicians.
And I'm kicking myself that we didn't really nudge our teen youth social action group to participate, but I'm grateful that we'll have the recording to share with them, to show them the Torah roots of caring for the earth.
And I will say, Janice, that there are many, excuse me, many commentators that say that taking care of the earth is the most important form of tikkun olam. And I say, because that's exactly what it is, right? What does tikkun olam mean? Tikkun olam means to repair the world. And that is the most important form or the most, I would say, foundational form of repairing the world is making sure there is a world, that the world is not destroyed. So feel free to share that with the Social Action Committee also. Any other comments or questions?
So Sandra, the comment I want to make is adult education had asked if you could speak about, because it's so close to Tu B'Shvat, could speak about the Jewish view of taking care of our world. And I would say you certainly did that. And I thank you also. I know Janet's going to be thanking you in a minute. It's interesting that when I was raised, I saw this absolutely do not waste, do not waste. And I was associating it with my father growing up during the time of the Depression. I was associating a lot of this stuff with the Depression as to why in my family they were very, very careful. My father would say, you're leaving the room, shut the light and don't waste the water. And if we're done with these clothes, it was always giving everything away. And that's how I've been raised, which is hard now because when I'm at this stage where I'm trying to clean up the house, it's hard to just throw out. I just don't feel comfortable about that. And now I see it comes from do not destroy. So thank you for that.
You know what, Nancy, I was raised with don't destroy anything because there are millions of poor people in the world, right? Which did not have a Jewish take on it. It wasn't really about Judaism. But I also wonder today, how much of it came from the fact that my grandparents had a Jewish education and how much of that transferred into this, into their behaviors, even if they weren't associating it with Judaism anymore, which is what you're saying. Maybe it did, the Depression also had its effect, but maybe they had learned about it even before the Depression. So
That's a good question.
So I want to thank all of you for the opportunity to be here with you today. As Nancy said, you will all receive the PowerPoint. My email address is on the PowerPoint. If you have any questions, anything that you would like to discuss later, a question comes to mind, that's usually what happens to me. When I'm asked, do you have any questions? I don't. And then half an hour later, I go like, oh, shoot, I did have a question. Feel free to email me. I do respond to emails. So you'll have my email. Feel free to contact me anytime.
Lorraine, was your hand up just now, Lorraine? You're on mute.
You're muted, Lorraine.
You. I lost my husband. It's been almost 2 years, and I have not destroyed anything. I mean, of all his things, I give them away. I still have things. And even now, I found his dress socks, and they're like knee socks, and they're wonderful. And it's like he's given me a gift. And, from the female pressure, why don't you give that away? Why don't you give that away? And I'm giving them to the kids and to donating it to the various organizations. And I feel like it's just a compulsion to do that.
Good. And it is, sometimes we think, well, I can't change the world. And I remember, I think it was Margaret Mead that said, don't ever say that one person can change the world, right? It's the only way the world can be changed is person by person. So I believe that we really sometimes our potential to make a difference, because if our children see us doing things in a certain way, then they're going to do it too. And then their children, so it's like in your friends and your neighbors and you're talking to people, you can make a difference. It really is important.
These are certainly important ideas that we can pass on to our children through Girl Scouts, Cub Scouts, public schools, Hebrew schools, and adult organizations. And the question comes up to my mind is when we get these requests on the computer, and how do we know that it's really going to work for people? A lot of times we have to investigate all these organizations that want to help the earth. But I think after we do so, we should make an effort to donate. There is, I know friends who are moving and don't know what to do with their excess furniture. I said, they were going to put it out on the street. And I said, well, call Habitat for Humanity. They may come and take it. Or what was it? There were other organizations besides Goodwill that would take used food, used clothing and used furniture. We have to just make people aware that those opportunities do exist.
And
Janet, here's a suggestion. The synagogue can actually do a little bit of research, make a list of these organizations and send it out. You know, if you ever are thinking of getting rid of things, here's a list of organizations you should call. Because people also are lazy. We don't, you know, because they're busy. Like I'm a very busy person. I don't have time to spend, you know, an hour trying to find organizations. I mean, sometimes I do. I just told you about the LPs, but I think it's helpful for others if the congregation can actually share with their members, here are organizations that you should think about if you, and you're not even telling them to donate money. You're just saying, if you are getting rid of something,
Right.
you know, reach out to these organizations. Here are the phone numbers, see if they will come and pick it up.
And it's interesting, Jess, Janet, you just reminded me too, because I had seen with some ideas of where to donate things that you don't want anymore. And if you have old blankets and old towels, and even if they have little rips in them, wash them. And the animal shelters use them for their dogs and their cats to cuddle up with warm blankets. I mean, these are ideas I had not even thought about, you know, because we're not allowed to put textiles out, to get rid of textiles here. And so to donate them to animal shelters and things. So there are a whole list of things out there, and that's a great idea about the Schultz putting them together. Thank you.
There are lists like this, but I have a friend who's in New York and planning to move, and she's not bringing her furniture, and she's in Manhattan, and she has not been able to find one place, despite all the lists of of someone who will pick up her stuff. She's totally frustrated. So that, you know, hopefully Boston is better, but New York,
Manhattan is a whole, I'm familiar with the issues in Manhattan. The problem with Manhattan is that because they have parking difficulties and traffic difficulties, then nobody wants to they will all take it if you bring them to them, but
right,
they don't want to come and pick up.
right. And she's totally frustrated by it.
Yeah. If she lives in a building, Edith, the suggestion
Yes.
is offer it to the super.
What?
Offer it to the super in the building. This is a very Manhattan thing.
Oh, all right. I'll suggest that one. But the thing is, she doesn't drive, so she can't even take small things anywhere. And
Right.
my niece in Brooklyn gave her a couple of places. My son went on Google and found a website, and they all say they will pick up. But when she
Right.
calls them, I'm sorry, no. She said all of the websites basically are kind of faking it a little bit.
Yeah.
But no, that's a good suggestion. Thank you.
Of course.
But the other thing here in Norwood, we have a thing where it's, I don't know whether I can call them an organization or whether they're a company, what they are, but they have boxes at every school, and you can put anything fabric or leather in them. They will sort it, and they will, if things are able to be reused, like at a Savers or something like that, they will do it to that. They will then give it to them, or if it just needs to be recycled, they will deal with it that way as far as fabric goes. And the town makes money because they pay them for it.
That's good to know.
Yeah. That's Norwood. I don't know about anybody else.
That would be a great idea for public schools because people of different economic levels could bring it and take without any questions. Well, Sandra, I want to thank you so much for this program and for giving us the PowerPoint afterwards. It's been very enlightening and warming to know that our Jewish philosophy from ancient times to the present has had concerns for the earth foremost in their writings. And I hope we get to speak with you again.
Of course, anytime. Thank you very, very much for the opportunity. Nancy, thank you for putting me in touch with your community. It's my pleasure and honor to have been here with you. And as I said, any questions that come later, please feel free to email me.
Thank you. I had no idea that going from the environment was going to go through how am I getting rid of different things in the house? And that's exactly what it is. It's all connected. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Have a great Sunday, everyone.
All right. Thanks. You too.
Bye.
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 And I want to remind our attendees that you can make donations of any amount if you wish to the Arnold and Leona Rubin Adult Education Fund so that we as a committee can find more quality programs for everyone to enjoy. And now on behalf of the Adult Education Committee, good day. Have a wonderful day.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.